Hello, greetings, folks. One more time, we are television active, and on Enterprise TV, the job is to interrogate issues thrown up by the world around us. Today, arm twisting tactics. Russia sending Nigerian and other African students to war for visa renewal. You know, it's said that during emergency situations like war, people are not bound by rules of fair play. They resort to underhand tactics to take advantage. Recall that Russia invaded Ukraine on February 24, 2022, in what has become the largest attack on a European country since World War II. The fortunes of Russia in the crisis are mixed. Remember, Ukraine is backed by the United States of America. We hear, allegedly, that Russia is sending thousands of migrants and foreign students, including Nigerians, to fight alongside its troops for visa renewal. Russia, it is rumored, has threatened not to extend the visas of African students and young workers unless they agree to join the military. Well, some Africans on work visas have either been detained or forced to choose between fighting or face deportation. Africa is in a quandary, if you ask me. Now, the way out is for governments, at least around Africa, to keep their citizens at home and safe. Shall we have a conversation, please? My conversationalist today is the inelastic Dr. Kenneth Ikenwa, lecturer at the University of Lagos, and of course, is a commentator on international affairs. Dr. Ikenwa, I greet you. Welcome.
Citizen Jones, nice seeing you again, sir.
Okay then, welcome.
I doff my hat.
I take it from you. Thank you. You know, we have been there, you know, before now. Africa had always been the loser, or so it seems. So we are here again.
Well, we're here again. We've been here, I think, in the last 400 years. Things don't seem to have changed. Africa and the beautiful bride of Africa, Nigeria, seems to be a pawn in the hands of...
at the receiving end?
Well,
this is deliberate.
It's a demand and supply situation.
Okay.
All right. So there's a demand side to it and there's a supply side to it. But it's a very serious issue, a subject matter that we would take a look at. And we have to be very eclectic about it. Okay. And what does that mean? It means that we should ask questions from different perspectives. If we're a nation of over 200 million strong Nigerians with a youthful population that is almost 65% of Nigerian population. And then there's a syndrome.
And for that matter, the workforce.
The workforce, a very powerful, viral workforce, supposedly. If that human and intellectual capital had been properly appropriated and harnessed.
But at home.
At home. Okay. All right. So you now see where the demand and supply side of the politics and the economics of the subject matter begins to evolve from.
But sorry. When you remember the first leader of Germany, Otto von Bismarck, he said, politics is not an exact science.
Well, politics is not an exact science. It's a behavioral science. Okay. You may not be able to put acid and paper together or acid on the skin and get it to burn when it comes to politics. But if you get certain permutations right, you are expected at least to be certain of 80% of an outcome. And the question again, back to the subject matter, is have we gotten our politics right? Now, it also brings us back to the question of the chicken and the egg. Which one comes before which?
One of them.
Should we be focusing on our politics in Nigeria, or should we be talking about the economics? Now, is the economics responsible?
Or should both be going?
Should it be pari passu, or should it be symbiotic in our discussion and our conversations? It begs a lot of questions. In philosophy, we'll call that principi petitio. While we're having a very, very cataclysmic syndrome in Nigeria, which we call the Japa syndrome, we tend to want to joke about it. But sooner than later, the consequences of having this, migration wave, as it is,
but
it is a wave.
But Dr. Ken,
Ken
Ikenwa, Dr. Ikenwa.
Yes, sir.
The grass is not always greener on the other side.
But at least let people go and explore the potential for the grass to either be green or gray. So whether it is green or whether it's gray, the important thing is that at least some people should have that experience, or they have been made to believe that there is the possibility of having a better life.
Yeah.
The underlying operational phrase here is, why are Nigerian youths traveling in their drove?
Does that not make you want to be on the same page with late Professor Chinua Achebe? There was a country.
There was a country.
Yeah.
I have that book in my study. It maintains the topest position on one of my shelves. There was a country, and he also came out.
Is it possible to go back to that country where production, industry, and all that were
I was asked this question on another TV station a little under 2 weeks ago, if not a couple of days back. And I gave a very honest answer, because as an expert, they wanted me to give an expert, analysis and just tell them this is the way out. And I'm afraid to say, Citizen Jones, that most of the problems and most of the issues that are peculiar and particular to the Nigerian situation, our social structure, are issues that are very complex, which do not have straight, simple, cast in stone answers. Now, asking the question, can we go back to the country we had in the 60s? Can we go back to the country?
Possible? Maybe my question should be, is it possible to go back there?
Can we go back to the country we had in the 70s? Where my handsome Delta Igbo Bendel Midwestern Nigerian father fell in love with a princess from Lagos in Western Nigeria, and nobody could hinder that marriage. But can that be possible today?
And the fact is, the union produced Ken.
The union produced not just Ken, but 5 other beautiful princesses.
Okay.
Now, but back to the subject matter, and back to the question, and back to the magnus opus by Chinua Achebe.
Okay.
Can we go back to that country?
Yeah.
We can possibly get back to that country if we follow the natural selection of life, the natural laws of the selection of life. And that brings us to evolution. That brings us to transition. I believe that Nigeria is being held hostage by a set and a cohort of individuals that will make it impossible for us to build a proper country.
People I'd rather refer to as revisionists.
Well, I think for better want of expression, let's go to the street and refer to that cohort as ancestors. They are ancestors. They are ancestors that I've been hearing about since the 80s when I was in primary school, when I was in the university, and from the history that we read in the 60s. These were soldiers. These were politicians. These were politicians. Yeah. That at one point in time or the other, some in their 20s had positions, had privileges, and now that I am almost 50, I am still made to think of who amongst these ancestors I should vote for.
Without meaning to puncture that balloon,
please puncture it. I will inflate it and it will still go up again.
I'm not in a hurry, because Britain's Winston Churchill is still relevant here.
But you didn't hear, and you would not hear of the grandchildren of Winston Churchill. You would not hear of the relative of Winston Churchill. We never heard of a Winston Churchill that gave his daughter, that gave his son-in-law contracts to rebrand the country England. Let's be straight, factual, and sincere about the Nigerian situation. All right? We can't begin at this stage of our evolution to compare apples. Or you compare apples with apples. You don't compare apples with cocoyam or apples with agbalomo or cherry. Nigeria is not Britain. This is Nigeria. What is the problem? The problem, before we come back to the Russian issue, is that we are failing to lay the foundation for proper generational transition. It is a new generation with new thinking, with new paradigms, not analog thinking, not a paradigm that is based on avarice, that can build the proper country where my own children and my own grandchildren will be willing to stay, will be willing to come back and carry the passports, and will want to invest their lives and possibly die here, and afterwards go find themselves wherever they find themselves. So why can't we have the transition? Why can't we have the transition? As the conversation unfolds, we would look at this issue and look at the bits and bytes of it and bring out the fact from wherever the treasure of truth has been buried on this matter.
Obviously, we have Nigeria has one thing to do now. Keep Nigerians at home, making the environment conducive for that, and keep them safe, don't you think?
The Constitution of the Federal Republic of Nigeria, 1999 as amended, imposes the first general duty of the government of the Federal Republic to provide for the security of the Nigerian citizens. Now, over the last 25 years, has that been the case? I'm sorry, I'm not a lawyer, so I can't quote exact subsections or subsections. Has that been the case? I have lived in the country the last 25 years where I have moved from my ability to be able to travel to my village in Iseluko Delta State or to my mother's village in Lagos State here, travel unaccompanied, travel sleeping off in the bus, enjoying the ambience of traveling from Lagos through Ijebu, Ode, through Ondo, through Benin, stopping over at Ore, having a good meal, and hoping to get home, looking at those two very old satellite poles that you will see before you get to my village. Now, thinking that, is it possible for me to travel from Lagos to my village without looking for how I will get a mobile policeman to escort me in my car back home? The Nigerian society, as far as the economics of security is concerned, has become very transactional. And it's a pity that we found ourselves here. And this, amongst other reasons, is one of the key factors responsible for why many Nigerians are seeking to leave Nigeria. Now, where do they go to? It brings us back home to the core and the meat of the discussion: Russia, Europe, the Americas. We even hear countries in Latin America now offering Nigerians to come, get visas, get resident permits. These are countries that are saturated with drug cartels and wars. Those countries are even asking our graduates to come and teach, come and work. We'll give you papers.
Yeah, but
what has gone wrong with Nigeria?
Country running is like keeping an engine running. It's either you take the right decisions or make the decisions right. You understand? So it goes back to what I said when I quoted Otto von Bismarck. Politics is not an exact science like mathematics and what again, you know. So it's having to do with the choices we are making. But these governments, which have kept us down over time, had been elected by Nigerians, you and I inclusive. Can you
recognize that? I know you always want to go in that direction.
No.
And the direction brings us to the maxim and the theory. The leadership.
You have no right to think for me. Let me think for myself, because I can.
I could guesstimate that you would usually want to go in that direction. So let's play with words here, because I know you are a general when it comes to that. But on a more serious note, we need to come back to asking the right questions. Now, I want to quote the first female prime minister and the only female prime minister that India has produced. And in India, Indira Gandhi, whose father I think was the first or second prime minister of India. And she says here, the power to question is the basis for all human progress. The power to question, the power to ask questions is the basis for all
to interrogate,
progress. So we should be asking not just questions, but asking the right questions, not just the right questions, but asking strategic questions. Why?
And demanding answers to them.
Well, not just demanding answers, but demanding accountability when we find the answers to those questions. If we will be allowed to find or to search for the answers to those questions. Why am I saying this? We need to look at our democracy. We need to look at our democratic structure. And I'm happy that one of the tenets of democracy is the freedom of expression, the freedom of movement, and the freedom of speech. And I hope that I can see that
one of the underpinning requirements for a healthy democracy is respect for rule of law.
Respect for rule of law. I'm coming back to the freedom of speech. I'm hoping that I'm seeing gradually that we're evolving into a country where people can actually have freedom of speech and actually have freedom after speech.
Have you also thought about a corresponding freedom of thought here?
Well, that's a tough kernel to crack.
Okay.
Freedom of thought, because we have so many institutions that seem to emasculate the ability of people to think freely and think in the direction of progress. What we're talking about, the subject matter, boils down to progress. If Nigeria was as progressive as it ought to be, if Nigeria was as progressive as it was in the 70s, I still have a beef with my mother up till today. And the question is this, and I know that the internet never forgets, and I know sometime 10 years from today, somebody may want to use this against me, but use it against me in the context of what is on ground. My mother had the opportunity to give birth to the 6 of us in Britain. Each time she went to Britain, having schooled in Britain and came back to start working in Nigeria, my mom elected to give birth to her children in Nigeria through the 70s and into the early 80s. The question has always been why, and I still ask her that question some 45, 50 years afterwards. She would categorically say that the Nigeria of the 1970s was a fantastic country.
But I agree with
the currency, the naira of the 1970s was better exchanged, was more powerful than the dollar, was more powerful than the pound. You could exchange it in the Heathrow.
Remember that.
Can we say the same of that in Nigeria today?
You recall
that
Nigeria today? You took your naira out of the country. If you were going to
you should tell me that story, sir. You should tell me that story. So these are some of the questions.
In short, there was a country.
There was a beautiful country.
We are yearning for today.
Country. There was a strong
many years after
economy.
Now,
and it hurts.
Let's go back quickly. Do you think Russia is right in adopting these arm twisting tactics? Because by going to war with Ukraine was an election by Russia.
Life, war, politics is a jungle. And in the jungle, the first law of the jungle is survival.
Yeah.
Every country, every individual,
every
animal will do everything possible to survive.
Yeah.
And so if citizens or aliens, as we will call them, in immigration law, have found themselves in a country and have elected to remain in that country, and the country has said the basis on which you can remain in this country is to identify with our struggle and identify with our collective identity as a people that are running what, in quote, Putin calls a special operation. The choice is now for those individuals to choose whether they would identify with that to get a visa or to get a future Russian passport or not. But you see, we have the tendency in the media to focus on one side of the dialectics when it comes to discussing issues of this colonial, technological, military powers. Now, when you take a look at what has happened to Africa, in Africa, since the 1600s, when the Portuguese first landed here, the narrative seems to continuously be in the favor of Eurocentric perspectives and views of thought. Now, isolate these individual countries: France, Britain, Spain, Portugal, and maybe Germany and Russia. Which one of these countries ever did not participate in colonialization of Africa? Which one of these countries did not ever participate in the dehumanization of Africa and of Africans? That country singularly is Russia. I am not a lover of Russia. I don't have any special feelings for Russia, but I'm a lover of truth. I'm a social scientist. I'm a management scientist. And I speak to facts and speak to issues as they are. So if any country now comes out to start saying Russia has done this, Russia has done that, Russia is trying to survive. Israel is trying to survive. America has a military arsenal that has guarantees its survival until the end of the world. So the question of where, I'm very sure it is not only Nigerians that were asked to join the military. Now you say Russia asking Nigerians to join the military. How many Nigerians, and I hope the ambassador or the consul general of the United States Embassy, United States of America in Nigeria is listening to this.
Yeah.
How many Nigerians are serving in the United States Army? Let's come back to a popular program in Nigeria. We know of the Big Brother show. We know of a guy that was very popular for flaunting his white teeth and for flaunting his American citizenship. How did he become an American citizen? It was because he opted as a student to join the American military. So these things are not new. But we should be looking at the exploitative angle to it. We should be looking at the dangers that come with it. Yeah. And we should be looking at the challenge it poses for nationalistic tendencies of Nigerians to actually change their allegiance to other countries instead of Nigeria.
Dr. Ikenwa, the man on the sidelines watching you would naturally ask, are we in a quandary?
We're in an abyss. Something much more than a quandary.
Okay.
We're in a political, we're in an economic abyss, we are witnessing the greatest height of the recirculation of elites.
Wow.
We are witnessing the greatest height of the vicious circle of poverty. And the only thing that I can say, I mean, as a born-again Jewish Christian, is to continue to hope against hope. And there's hope. And I want to categorically say here that there's a major demography in the Nigerian population that we're leaving out of the evolutionary circle of Nigeria.
Which is?
If we have to get it right, we need to get more women involved in politics. We need to get more women involved in the management of the resources of Nigeria. We need to get more women involved in the administration of Nigeria. Konjawela did it. Arute Oma did it. And a few other women have done it. Let's bring those women back and give more women a chance.
I hope you are not expanding the frontiers of this discussion. But then,
like I said, it was going to turn out to be a very eclectic discussion. I underscore from different perspectives.
I underscore that because the late Baroness Margaret Thatcher said, if you want anything said, ask a man. But if you want anything done,
then
ask a woman.
Ask a virtuous woman, not just a woman. A virtuous one.
But women have not been stopped from participating. Do you think the Nigerian woman is ready for 21st century politics as played by my country, your country?
The conspiracy triangle in Nigeria would not give women that opportunity. And nobody is going to help the chick break out of the egg. When you help the chick to break out of the egg, the chick can never survive again.
Oh, yeah.
So it is a clarion call to women to break out on their own. I am mentored politically. I'm mentored politically by a woman, Barrister Mrs. Stella Odife. All right. Some of the things you see in me, she was the first to expose me on TV about 20 years ago, and I remained a consultant to her non-governmental organization and an adopted son.
God bless her.
God bless Stella Odife. And God bless my mother too, Princess Clara. So women should not wait to be given the opportunity.
To be invited.
Tokenism, all right? Political tokenism that should accommodate women, that should tolerate women, would not solve the Nigerian problem, would not solve the darkness that they have been kept in. Ransom, Fela's mother was not given the opportunity. She broke on that door and she broke it open. And many other women like that.
The glass ceiling, as they say.
I think what we're having in Nigeria is even bigger than the glass ceiling. Let's say labyrinth. It's more of a labyrinth. And so women just have to navigate their way out of that labyrinth.
Margaret Ekpo, Gawaba, Sambo, and so on.
Many of them,
they dot the landscape. But that's for another day. But as we take this home now, what do you think government at home should do in this circumstance?
We must look at the living conditions, the existing social conditions of the country, and look for the best way where we can begin to enact policies, promulgate laws, and these laws should be centered around building a favorable cleimate. All right, for survival. First thing, and then for business. Second thing, and then for hope. Okay, we're talking about so many things that also brings us back to my own constituency, which is the educational sector. And you find out that you have so many graduates that are graduating, and the question is, where are the jobs? Where are the loans to be given to them, even they even want to go out and become entrepreneurs? So the government should stop playing politics with the destiny and the future of Nigeria and the destiny of Nigerian youths and the destiny of that demography of the workforce. The government should focus on how do we build a more favorable climate. Okay, how do we make the monetization of values, all right, less enticing to the Nigerian youth? The average Nigerian youth now wants to drive a big car. The average Nigerian youth now, his aspiration is to lead the country.
You don't think something is a little wrong with that?
Something is wrong because the leaders have not led by example. So when we begin to have leaders that will lead by examples, and bequeath examples as legacies, we will begin to have a redirection in the will of the nation and in our collective progress
Dr.
as a nation.
The index finger of the producer is saying, wind up, we must apply the brakes here. But not before thanking you for your time and your intervention. Thank you.
Always my pleasure.
Yeah. My guest, the unputdownable Dr. Kenneth Ifeanyiwa
Ikenwa. Olisaemeka Oluwasegun Ikenwa.
All right.
You can add Ibrahim to it if you want to.
Kenneth Ikenwa for short. But let me close the show by quoting Otto von Bismarck again. He said, "Never believe anything in politics until it has been officially denied." So the debate, let it continue from your part of town. But do remember, African students, including our Nigerian students, are not having the best of times in Russia.
In Europe.
Or Europe by extension. And our hearts go out to them. Wish them well. That's it on the show. Thank you, Ken, for your time.
I doff my hat once again.
We'll see you again.
Definitely.
Okay, then. My job is done. And so until the next time, this is yours sincerely, Citizen Jones Hussein, saying bye-bye now. Take care. Enterprise TV, a tradition of truth.